last name.
I don't either.
I'll get that to you.
Okay. 'Cause I haven't seen anything, and sometimes I don't get things. I don't know why, I'm not part of the loop. I usually get them from somebody else, like you guys.
I didn't even think
Okay.
about that one, to tell you the truth, so.
Okay. Yes, have we guys, commissioners, have we heard anything on any of our federal mineral royalties, Hard Rock Mine Trust account, or Metal Mines license tax accounts? Any of those sound familiar?
No,
No, okay.
none of those. I've been trying to forward you every
Okay.
email I get from Mako. I have heard nothing.
Okay. Other than that, our CIPs and health. And not too many people have budgeted anything out of those, so I guess we'll just kind of wing those again. If I hear from somebody. Oh, and silos, we did get pretty good that on this here. The boat dock didn't do very good. The first couple of years it did, and the last couple of years it's dropped way down.
Okay. They increased their fees this year for the boat dock.
Okay.
What page?
Very last page, 46. We actually got more for the camping and the gazebo rentals.
I think the difference in that is, and we can ask Sharon, but I think it was a misunderstanding in the percentage required to be paid. It's 10%, and I think she was asked to pay 30 and did,
Oh,
yeah. So if anything, we may owe her money.
okay. I'll have to go back and double check, because usually she brings it in
Yeah,
with the total and then her cost to us to match the check, so I can double check that.
sounds
Go
good.
look at the email, I wanna make sure.
Okay.
Yeah, revenues are the easy part for the most part.
Yeah,
Either we get it or we don't.
right. Start with the easy and go to the hard. Are you wanting to go to expenses then, speaking of the hard? Or something else?
Oh, I'm game for anything.
Me too.
So probably. Most of my questions are going to be, Mike and I kinda talked about this, the Blackfoot contract.
Where, are we on Pilt?
See you guys.
Thanks, Daryl.
Oh,
You wanna do Phil?
I just, we
That's fine.
can, yep, can.
Okay, so Blackfoot contract, well, that would be the Blackfoot, the phones, buying out of the phones.
Mm-hmm.
What is that,
We're gonna
Connect
connect
contract?
contract,
Connect,
Clearfly,
Clearfly, CenturyLink,
CenturyLink.
isn't there something else in there too?
When, for the offsites, like road, solid waste, health clinic, it's Montana Internet.
We don't need to buy out of them,
Okay,
thank goodness.
yep, that's right, we don't.
Yeah.
It's just monthly fee.
So it's just these three, and that was about 23,000. Okay. So, anything else?
We just kinda, Michelle and I kinda need to know, because we're probably gonna need to revise our, like for the maintenance every month bills that they charge, access services, all that kinda. So when we do our worksheets, we know how to charge each department for that cost, our
We don't have
breakouts.
any of that yet.
Okay,
I don't know when we will,
okay.
so,
So we'll just charge them what we've been doing for now until we see a bill?
yeah, keep the
Okay.
budgets the same and
Is
then
that,
we'll.
are you talking
change
about
that.
the charges from Blackfoot? I called Chrissy this morning, and she was gonna talk to Scott, and he was gonna try to get me that information, because it was budgeted, so he was gonna try to break it out into, he had it broke out into buildings, he's gonna break it out into departments.
Okay. That'll help.
You know, before, when we've done some of this kind of stuff, it's just a percent based on the number of phones or computers in use in that particular department, and break it out a percent of the whole.
Yeah,
So I'm sure they're doing the same thing, but if we're gonna go up, we need to, Michelle will need to adjust her worksheet
yeah,
that she does for everybody.
And I think if it goes up with the 2% cuts, we'll just call it a wash in the budgets, not ask for people to come up with it. We will find a way to put it in would be, I think, the most responsible way to go.
so this other one is, the Northwest Energy, the 10,000 for the 4-inch building, that comes off of the request on 18,
Yeah.
19.
Except we agreed to actually pay Allison the difference between that cost and the loss of revenue from DOR, that allows us to save that money and move extension in here until we have a better option.
Oh, so that's offsetting the, okay.
So it's,
okay.
instead of 10,000, it is, instead of 11,000, for the city of Townsend too, it's actually 2,300
Okay.
that'll be coming out total.
Okay,
The,
you've lost me.
So we will still be taking out some money for extension. Instead of $11,000, 10,000 to Northwestern Energy and 1,000 to the city of Townsend. It will be that amount minus what Department of Revenue was paying in rent. And so 2,300 per year will go to extension. And that should be prorated. So they are not moved until after the fair, which will be August. So that would be 2,300 divided by 12, whatever that is. 2,300 divided by 12. So that's 192. 2,300. So if they get moved in July, it'd be August, so it'd be, let's see, there, minus 192. It'll be 1916 that will take out a Pilt for extension,
1,916.
correct. So you had mentioned that public health was bringing in a whole lot more revenue, and that we could look at the match, MCH match to come out of that revenue, out of that budget. Do you think that's still a possibility? Or should we continue to take that out of PILT? It would be all the grants, I think.
Probably one more year.
Here?
Teresa said that she's found some misbilling by the gal that no longer works for her,
Okay.
and it might end up costing them. So any savings that they were gonna have, I think, is gonna be put in repayment.
Okay.
Because Jody,
No, that, we don't
No
need to
names.
talk about that.
so,
Let's just leave it.
misbilling, yeah,
Let's just
got
leave
some refunds.
Okay.
So.
So the liability insurance, starting at the top and going down, will be 162-ish, 162,000. I don't know if you have that memorized. So that goes up a little bit. Food pantry, tree board, and CASA stay the same. You guys good with that, Mike?
Yeah,
Okay. Airport. I don't see a reason to continue that right now, since they just got their project is done. Is there anything you see there, Debbie?
Not if the runway's done.
Right? Okay. And they always have an excess in their fund that goes to the runway, so I don't see any reason we don't just keep that at 0 this year. Anybody wanna argue?
No.
Okay. We're not doing the IGT anymore.
Okay.
The 43-8 fund, 50 grand is still there. Payment for intercap loan, we're gonna have to talk about when we're gonna get that paid off. But I think that should just stay for now at our annual fee.
You see, this last year, it was like we had 2 payments this year.
Okay, so that was about 3,000,
Yeah, 2948, yeah.
okay.
And I'm not sure I know why.
I don't know if it helps us to pay that off if we need to. We're gonna have to address extension at some point and our chemical storage. But however we wanna do that, I think it should wait until we have Daryl on board and can actually put some good time and energy into some solid planning. What we borrowed, Debbie, I did not bring your email to Jess with the total amount that we had borrowed from all our floating mills except for, was that 100 and, do you remember what that was? I might have my email. That needs to come out of PILT. So we made a promise in the resolution that we'd be paying back those accounts.
I can see it sitting on my desk.
Need more dividers.
No, I don't, I need less stuff. I'm trying to put everything I might need a question on in here. I've got more than I wanted. I can see it sitting right on my desk too. I think it was with all the ones. All the ones where we cut the mills down was about 92,000.
92,
Mhm.
okay.
That last year's mill, it was like 5 point something mills. For all of those, to put them back up to where it would need to be.
That may be coverable if we get an increase in valuation higher than we are conservatively expecting. If not, it'll have to come out of PILT because we made a promise. And then also, Mike, along with that, we're gonna have to look to PILT to filling in we actually put all of the reserves from the general fund into the bars trial, into some of the other, a little bit into law enforcement, some of those other expenses from last year. So 10% would be about 149,000, and I propose taking that out of PILT rather than those other funds, letting everybody else keep their money from last year and just infilling from PILT. Any questions on that?
No, I think that'd be the way to go.
Okay.
What does that leave us in built?
Not a lot. We had about 628 through the year. We spent about 214, and that was building last year's budget, as you can see by everything there. That leaves us about 400, and then so all of these will cut into that 413. We do have PILT for next year, but we still don't know how much. So we don't know what we're working with at this point. All we know is what we see on the news, and depending on yeah, exactly.
I'm sorry. You can't even take a fathom guess at that, depending on the channel you're on, so. Now, is this school money coming back?
That is a 2-year plan, and then they said that that would end. Yeah. Who knows?
I didn't know we came here to gamble today.
Oh, man.
What's the government gonna do?
Right? Yeah, it's okay for them to have all this nonsense going
Oh,
on, but they
yeah.
don't understand what it's doing to the rest of us. Yeah, I can't pull it up. I don't have Excel on my phone. So, reserves.
The other one that I keep forgetting is the Limestone Hills, Department of Interior. Then Montana Internet supposed to pay us back for what we pay.
Yes.
Been typically had a pill, are we still doing that?
Yeah, but let's make sure they get a letter. Nick has been pretty good once they understood that that was their obligation. Let's just give them a chance to know that,
Okay.
because I don't think they got that
Because I know, this overpayment thing that came up, they had clients that they were sending the bill directly to Montana Internet for versus bill, like ours was, we were billed, we were paying it, and have Montana Internet pay us back. But
Yeah.
it's obvious they can direct bill those clients, so we wouldn't even have to be in the middle of it. Montana Internet would be directly billed by the Department of Interior. So I wasn't sure with all this, now that we're all cleared up,
Yeah,
if we're still doing that, or,
yeah.
okay.
We just need to make sure that we send them a letter so they know.
Okay.
So I think that's been the biggest issue. It's just lack of communication.
Mhm.
The autopsy fee would come out of PILT,
Yeah, I think it's.
the 95.
Yeah. Because it's always been a guesstimate. And I know there's, and
That's what we're looking at, is another 277, so that's
what we
pretty
got
good.
left here.
Mm-mm. No, we have about 130, 106, 140 from last year's PILT, not this coming year's.
And it, coroner's such a pain in the ass, wants to kind of give you what they're trying to do. And it's at the national level, and in the states, the coroner's association's not in support of it. And so, which is good, I hope, but, I'm the chairman of the coroners group between MSPOA and the Coroners Association, the vice president of coroners, and so on. We're not in support of it, but the medical examiners across the nation are pushing very hard, and they've gone to the federal level to get coroners to this nationally certified coroner certification. We're against it because the fact is that it is $50 just to apply, non-refundable, and then you have all the stuff you have to do, and then it's $400 to take the test, non-refundable, and you have to do it every year. And so every year you have to recertify. And so for our agency, obviously you're looking, you're gonna spend at least probably $600 per coroner. And so you're $2,400, and then whatever changes after that. Bigger agencies, obviously, a lot more money. Cascade County have 37 coroners, so they're greatly opposed to it as well. But there's a lot of push on the federal level to make coroners do this nationally certified medical examiners training. And so it drives us all crazy, but it is being pushed on us fairly hard. We're fighting it the best we can, but Dr. Kurtzman, who's the chief medical examiner from Montana, is very adamant about it. And so I wouldn't be surprised here in the next legislative session that something gets brought up in that component. We're gonna fight it tooth and nail, but I just kinda wanna give you a heads up in the future that that's one of the battles we're facing. I'll probably do the certification, cause we're hoping that maybe the coroner, the actual coroner will do it, and that'll be the oversight for everybody else, and maybe that'll make it feasible. So a lot of the coroners are just saying, maybe we'll do it, and then maybe it'll appease everybody if we kinda get in the forefront of it. So you'll probably see some claims at some point, me trying to get that done. And then hopefully when legislation rolls around, they'll say, if the coroner's done it, then he can oversee everybody else like he's supposed to, and maybe put it to bed. So, just so you know, that's kind of the path we're going down that way, so. Just so you know. I'm always about FYI, so,
That was wrong, Mike, that total. We would actually spend about 100,000 of next year's PILT for this whole plan, not including the Meridian Bridge. Forgot about that.
Yeah.
So we'd probably be into next year's PILT by 150-ish,
Yeah.
which is fine. You know, we know it's coming. If we didn't know it was coming, then we couldn't, then we'd have to cut that back. This year, we, through the budget, we're 214 in, so it's about half. And that gives us a little bit of wiggle room, not a lot, especially since we don't know what PILT is for next year yet. So we would want to be as cautious as possible. But I think that gives us a good place to go. Gives us the ability to fund some of our CIPs.
can I ask one more question?
Mm-hmm.
Indigent, you know, I know, Mike Stevenson and I came down last year in regards to the indigent burial. Well, I guess I didn't even, it just dawned on me now. What did we have set aside for that? Because I know we changed the price.
Should we go into the expenditure and,
I think we put 4,000 in it
Okay.
when I was looking, let's see, that's part of it,
And that's what shows here, 4,000.
yeah. And we only spent 2,300, but I put that in case you had two.
Yeah. We only
We
do
didn't
them
sneak
like,
in, we only had one, thankfully,
Yeah.
but we did that in case there was, because at the time, I don't think we were sure they were gonna give us discounts, so we scared high. So there's still some of that sitting in there.
yeah, they wanted like $6,000 and I told them
Yeah.
they lost their mind. So,
Yeah. So there is still some sitting that we budgeted that we didn't spend.
okay.
That was,
Just I completely forgot about it till just now, so I just wanted to check.
going off of the memory, this doesn't have everything on it, but we do have the Sheriff's Office weapons and vehicle CIP that needs some from PILT. The building CIP usually gets 60 grand a year from PILT. The local advisory council for mental health, that'll come out of PILT. County attorney's law library that he forgot about, that'll come out of PILT. The library, the city county, or the school county library will probably need a little from PILT, although it might have it in the budget. Other bridges, anything that I forgot there, Debbie? Indigent burial, veterans burial, that's the one. We spent most of that last year, so that'll have to come out of PILT. And juvenile detention, transportation, and detention comes out of PILT. So we can't spend too much, but even with all of those, we're probably about where we were last year. But we'll still have to be sparing.
Have you heard if juvenile detention's planning on going up again? Have you heard anything?
Yeah, we just had a meeting that is not planning on going up
Okay.
again. But that'll change if the state makes any more cuts, which we expect.
Because I think we're aren't we 215 a day right now?
276.
Oh, so
Yeah.
it's even higher than I thought it was, okay.
Yeah,
I mean, we don't take many up there, but,
no,
you know, it's one of those that, there's a few that have been there, but that's gonna be a nightmare.
it is.
And these kids are getting more violent at a young age, and what do you do with them, you know? So,
Yeah,
but hell, almost $300 a day to house a kid there, and transport costs. We just took one, well, I think we have one up there right now. We took
Yeah.
one that was down in Boulder, and they sent him to juvenile detention because it was non-compliant down there. So I don't know which one it is, but we're gonna have, unless I don't know if he's under state jurisdiction. So I don't know if he's, I was trying to catch up with it and see where it was at, but I know Costa Lucky transported him. So I'm assuming he's still on our hold, so.
yeah, it's, the other reports I ran, we didn't budget anything, because till we knew, and we spent 4762 on medical, psychological, and boarding for a juvenile.
Okay.
this year. Yeah, and that's more than we spent the last, in 15-16 on Joey.
Well, and I know, and the downfall, so I'm getting a little concerned, and I know everybody keeps asking what we're gonna do about it. And obviously, you know, last week, 8 suicide attempts. That's 8 people being transported to St. Pete's. And then involuntary commits. I don't know if Journey Home sends us a bill. I know we sent 2 over to the Journey Home. I don't know if that was voluntary or if it was an involuntary action. State Hospital, obviously, you know, for a Friday afternoon till Monday morning is about $3,800. So, but it seems like we're running pretty rampant with mental health issues right now. And so I don't know how we're gonna, that the mental health stuff comes out of Val's account, Laura Springs, she has to pay those, but, just so, I mean, we took one there yesterday morning as well. I don't know, I mean, so that's 9 transports to St. Pete's over the week. Well, 8, and then 1 went to Bozeman. So I don't know if something got in our water, but it's, there's some things that are happening that we're really struggling with. Cost-wise, it's killing us on the overtime, it's killing us on everything else. So, you know, just so you guys are aware, something's happened. I don't know what it is, but we're going to see some. I think we're going to see some fairly significant. If this continues, we're going to have some increases that I don't know how we're going to deal with. So, what do you do?
I know, this cutting of mental health is just the most asinine, stupid, short-sighted, ignorant decision that the legislature could have made. That's where you put more money in and start actually making a difference and stop just buying Band-Aids and thinking it's gonna be the fix.
Yeah, we fought like hell for that mental health money in 15, and then they just cut and sliced it and diced it and everything else in 17. Everything we did in 15 just total waste of time now, and so it's really, I take it back. We transported 2 yesterday, you know, and it's one went to Bozeman yesterday, 1 went to Helena, and so I had officers sitting in 2 hospitals for Lord knows how long with these folks, and so it's just, I mean, it's. I just want you to understand, I mean, I was out yesterday, I worked for probably 9 hours yesterday trying to help out, but I was available to do so. So, you know, we're trying, it's just, these things we cannot control. And there's not even a demographic we can say that this is an issue in. I mean, we're everything from 18 years old to about 60, and I mean, and everything in between. So it's not like it's an isolated group, it's not like it's veterans that are coming back having issues. I mean, there's really no rhyme, reason, whatever, for any of this to be happening all at the same time. So, men and women, I think we're about 50-50 between men and women. Women maybe actually more for the suicide attempts in the last week. So, and just having mental crisis. So it's something's changed, and like I said. So I just want you guys to understand that there's going to be some things that I'm not sure how we're going to deal with. And if the state doesn't step up and do something, I don't know what we're going to do. So.
And that's why we have to reserve some of our pills, so that when we do have an emergency and one comes here and says, hey, I need some help, we're able to say, yeah. Which we've been able to do to this point. That's, I think, one of the most important things we have to do with the budget is, balance it, but then also keep something there so that
Well, and
when
my
something hits.
the one other thing I don't like about the way the law is and legislation is that if one of our folks goes down to Bozeman or Billings and they short circuit there, we're responsible for it. So if they end up in the behavioral health unit in Billings Clinic, and they give a Townsend address, and that's where they live, that bill comes to us, the transport to the courts and everything else, to Warm Springs, it all comes back to us. And so it can get ugly fairly quickly. And I know we had one here a couple of years ago, I think you were still on. You had a transport from Bozeman to Warm Springs because the person short-circuited in Bozeman and got put in down there and ended up going over to Warm Springs. So something's got to give. So.
Yeah. And Debbie, I apologize, I wasn't looking at this more updated pill sheet,
You know, one's
so I'm sorry.
this year's and one's next year's, that's where.
Okay. Yeah. There's a lot of savings here, between last year and this year, that's good. We'll tax it.
But it'll, there's always some place for it to go,
Yeah,
just the best place for it. Cause I need to be, so once I get some numbers thrown in, cause there's a balancing act to that.
Yeah.
Who gets it, who don't, so I have to make sure of that. When you were talking about the Wheatland roads, do
yeah.
you know which one of these 7100, 101, or 102? There's 3 different ones there, I'm not sure which one.
No, it actually is Pilt, so 40, is that
2900 is Pilt.
2,900. 1 to 900. Okay, so in the Pilt account, 4 years ago, we paid $150,000 for a turn lane on Highway 287. And that was, we had 2 options. There was the faction that was pushing for the bankruptcy. You know how well bankruptcies of subdivisions work from Wednesday night? So there was a faction pushing for bankruptcy of that particular subdivision. The county decided that it was a whole lot smarter to go another direction. And what we did is we loaned that developer $150,000. MBAC actually did all the paperwork, did all the facilitation. They had a letter of credit from years before, but MDT took so long to put together the project that letter had expired. We had no teeth whatsoever. It was a good faith move on the part of the sub-developer. Today we have a more safe turn lane, which is a plus, and that developer ended up paying back the money in full. There was a balloon payment this year of $90,000 that Doug did receive in, showed us the paperwork, and we got $27,000 additional in interest from the loan. And so what we decided a couple weeks ago is that 27 plus 90 will pay our 1 mil dues to MBAC and our 0.75 mils to BCDC for their assistance with economic development countywide. And we will reserve those funds for economic development purposes. If you could do a line item in PILT, that'd be great, or if you want to do a separate PILT fund, that's fine too.
So Doug has already put the money somewhere?
Yeah, and I asked him to just put it back in PILT,
Oh, okay,
so it should be in there. But I don't know
okay.
beyond that. And he may have put it in a fund, he may have put it in 2,900, I just don't know.
Okay.
But that's what it is.
So, maybe a separate. Okay, separate revenue line, okay.
All right.
Okay,
So for the cash reports, these all look pretty good, Debbie. Is there a way to protect our reserves that we've been working to rebuild from being spent? Like a fund, a PILT fund, setting the cash reserves, educating department heads? What would be the best way to go about making sure that those reserves do not get spent within the budget year?
that's a hard one because, like the general fund, trying to have everybody keep a certain amount is probably the best thing they're gonna have to do. I don't know.
Bob had mentioned taking a quarter out of each budget for that first quarter of the next year. So not cutting budgets, but showing a cut to the budgets, that would be the reserves. What do you think of that idea? I know it's more work on your part.
I think it goes back to kind of the way Natalie did it with that rebudgeted cash line.
Okay,
This is how much you didn't spend, But if you don't decrease from it year to year, you just carry that same amount, that's how Val got in trouble.
Right?
Natalie was doing it for her. I didn't know that. So she was spending it, but it wasn't being decreased. So. I don't know. Unless they create a line, reserve, don't spend as part of your expenditures, that this amount is something you shouldn't spend, but it's part of your spending, but you don't spend it. Kinda like we said, don't spend 10%. And I had to kinda keep track and say, of your budget, you should have this much left,
Right. Which did not work.
which didn't
It's
work.
not on you, but it didn't work. Nobody
Mhm.
believed us.
Mhm.
So they went ahead and spent.
So if you put it in there, say you're gonna
This
spend it.
General fund, not you guys.
Well, and I think-
Just the general
Well,
fund
and I
that
think
we're
we were,
talking about.
I think last week when Brandon pulled it up, we were at 86% overall.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
close.
Yeah.
We're close.
And that's my next step
You are,
here is.
but the
closer to
requirement
end of
wasn't
June
on
is
you
to go
guys.
through everybody and see how close to that 10% they got. Until we have final payroll, it's kinda hard to tell.
Yeah.
So
And then everybody.
can you do, Debbie, a line item? And Bob's idea was to take out the quarter, and what we'll have is mutiny, if we do that. So
Mhm.
is there a reason we couldn't do I don't know, a line, I think he said 394, or whatever, that just is says reserves, you may not spend without commission approval. It may mess up could we put it in after doing the tax levy requirements so it doesn't mess up those reports? We would essentially show the reserves as reserves on the tax levy requirements and a reserve in a line item on the expenditure budget for operational purposes, but
Which.
what we send to the state is the tax levy requirements report.
Right.
So we do something like that?
Where, and in times past where we've done anything reserve-wise, like if we had more than 33%, that's where we were putting their CIPs.
Correct. We don't have,
So if we were to say 10%, you can't spend, goes to general fund CIP or,
can we just keep it simple? Because what I don't wanna do is
No.
confuse everyone, we already have enough
I
confusion.
know.
Maybe we need to brainstorm this more, not for today, but I'm absolutely solid that until we have a team of 3 extremely knowledgeable people on the budget, which will take a while, we are going to run into the same problem every year with people spending their cash and their cash reserves, and then coming to us saying, well, I need more money. You haven't seen the 2 letters we discussed earlier, you need to. But we have from the general fund, people just wanna spend all the money, like they're drunken sailors on furlough, and I'm sorry, we just don't have it, and we've gotta protect it, or else there's going to be more of the same, and it's not doing this county any good whatsoever. So, I've seen it go down every single year. Again, just talking about the general fund right now, but we are driving ourselves into a train wreck if we don't figure out a way to protect those reserves. It's gonna be the strongest personalities saying, I want, and the personalities that are not as strong are going to be cutting, because we're gonna be laying people off if we don't get a handle on this.
And not to interrupt, I'm gonna leave. If you guys need something from me, let me know.
Okay, if you've got an answer to this dilemma,
I spent a lot of time thinking about it, so, just so you know, I was in the Army, wasn't in the Navy. So, if that
again, I
helps.
wasn't referring to you, it's general fund.
I know, it's just, I had to throw it out there. Brandon's gonna stay, so if you guys have questions for him, please ask. If you need me back here, just holler. I just got a few things I gotta try to get tied up before. We have weapon qualifications this afternoon, so I got some things that have to be dealt with. So if you need something, holler, I'll come back down, okay?
Thank you.
All right, thank you
All
guys.
right. So, if there's anything you can brainstorm, Debbie, this is my bone this year with the budget. And it's
I'm trying to
just
think,
gonna
we
be,
started something
not
last
at.
year. We had like a line item for emergency needs where, but that wasn't on the expenditure side, that was just as a revenue line, couldn't spend. X amount of revenue, we couldn't spend it.
Well, it would be
But-
revenue, isn't it, because we're infusing the budgets, could we do a revenue line? Could we do a revenue line by fund that says, no, see, you may be the brilliant person I believe you to be. How about like, here at the bottom, other financing sources, some, whatever the number would be,
We'll look up a couple lines.
reserves
And we could change the wording,
for emergency needs?
and change the wording.
Could we do cash reserves? May not be, requires, how about cash reserves requires commission approval? Does that work? Because it is revenue, it's not expenditure.
They can't spend that much, that has to stay there.
They can't spend anything unless we vote to approve it. And then this commission's voting to spend cash reserves prior to July, which,
So in each fund, they get the floating,
so that's where that 149-ish would go for the general fund, is into that one. And then we do it for public safety, we do it for district court, extension, fair, search and rescue, all of them.
all those that get some of the general mills.
Yeah. Does that work, do you think? Is that a solution? Did we just find it?
Instead of doing it transfer in, put it right into that. Transfer out and built to here is, yeah. Yeah, we won't know till we try.
Okay. And,
So like, okay, yeah, you have to leave that in your budget, it has to keep that amount in there.
right? And we could just do it fund-wide.
Because once Pilts puts it out there, that 49 is gonna go into each of those as revenue they can't spend to make up for,
Right,
try it.
okay,
I can run it by Bob too, and say, okay, here's what we're looking at, does this look right? Since he knows what he's,
right?
like I told him, I'm a visual person, I gotta see it and then it clicks, but, so to see it the first time.
And maybe just take the general fund and throw it in there and see what it looks like. How does it balance
Mhm.
out? Because cash reserves are revenue,
Mhm.
and I'm just, we're spending them as fast as we put them in the budget, and it is going to be a train wreck if we just don't get a handle on this. I don't see another way, and Bob didn't have any ideas either.
Mm-mm.
Mike, if you've got any ideas,
You just have to quit pretending to look at the cash and say, I can't spend this.
right?
If I have it, I can't spend it.
But that's not taking us anywhere.
Mm-mm.
We've got people saying, oh, I've got $100,000. Yeah, I'll just write a check. And they do. And because
Well, and
we
like
as
in
a
the general
commission
fund, if
aren't
they don't know
keeping
how
a
much
strong
they
enough
have.
eye on, we're losing our cash reserves before we get to June. That's why we're in this
Yeah.
mess. What's that?
Yeah, because like if you do the general fund, unless you've got revenue in, you shouldn't be spending any more than you absolutely have to.
Now, I did include fair extension, all those, they don't have problems. It's really the general fund.
There's so many of us in it, because we have a harder time with the ins and outs, because we have one big fund.
And I think it would be a tremendous service to public safety to do them. And I think district court, because she's had trouble, we need to do those ones, maybe just to start this year. We gave district court 13 grand last year for their reserves. That should still be there. If it isn't, we need to address that, and then also protect it in her fund. it?
And try it.
Okay. And if
Mhm.
Bob wants to yell, he can yell at me.
Mhm.
Okay. I don't think he will. I think he'll say, good job.
It's a
on
matter of
finding
me
a
getting it
solution."
on paper to see what we
Okay.
want.
All right. Should we do expenditures?
Go for it.
Okay.
Not getting any.
Can I ask you to put a comment under 410337 that says moved to county attorney? Or it would be, I think, legal services.
Yeah.
That's the law library, and that will just keep Corey from forgetting about it again. I can see how that happened,
Mm-hmm. Well, he was new, didn't know,
right?
and that's where going back and forth and changing things 100 times, little things like this get missed.
He wasn't, actually, got it in 15, 16, and 17, he just forgot about it in 18. Which is fine, I mean, we can make it work, and he hasn't been short of the money.
And that's just one of those little things I gotta fix in his budget yet with amendment.
Okay. And we agreed that would come from PILT. And the actual cost, not a cushion.
Outside of wages, do you want me to preliminarily plug in a 2.1 for the preliminary? Or what are we doing?
I don't know. The county compensation board agreed on 2.1, we have a letter from them, but we have been talking, about freezing. So, I do not suggest you do two different budgets, because I think that's just way
It's
too
caused
much work,
problems
it's ridiculous.
too many
So,
times, that's why
Can
there's
you leave it
nothing.
empty for now? And that we just work on operations at this point, or is that?
We can, it's just a matter of when we do our preliminary budget, it has to be,
How about this,
We
for the
do-
preliminary, let's just do the same, just do a frozen. Does that sound good to you, Mike?
Yeah.
And then
Okay.
if we do realize and get the budget balanced with all these plans and things look good, then we can talk about the other.
with the exception of the mandatory work comp
Right,
increases.
right, yeah. So at least gives us a place to start.
Okay. That gives me a place to start.
Okay,
So then it gives a complete picture.
yeah,
Because until we get valuations, it's just our best guess anyhow.
yeah.
When do evaluations come out?
First Monday in August, which I think this year is the 6th.
Then we have to have the budget finalized.
Within 30
days
days,
of
we
that.
have to have things set into Department of Revenue. Or whatever the statute says, by the first Monday following or within 30 days of receipt of valuations. Clock starts ticking.
And that's why we have to have a foundation set, which is why we do all this work, because if we started that August 1st, we would not get it done.
We'll have all of our foundations set, the only thing that's gonna affect us is if we decide we're gonna do wages or not. That'd be the only change.
Well, no, to the expenditures, yes. To the revenue, Debbie has a lot of work to do at that point because everything changes. Our valuation numbers, so that changes our personal tax, property tax, all of those tax lines.
Oh, okay.
The number of mills, having a 5.19 decrease in mills last year, that sent her into a tailspin because all of a sudden, all these departments that run on mills, we had to start juggling.
Money.
And, right, and that's where we started borrowing from those other departments so that public safety maintained their mills. So this year, if that happens, the best thing we can do for Debbie is everybody loses the same percentage based on how many mills they get of the floating mill balance. Or, we just take it all out of general fund and get rid of payroll. So there's Debbie working with us needs to make some hard decisions quick. And then we have to have it done 2 weeks before approving it, 30 days after getting those valuations. So Debbie really has 2 weeks to get all that work done. So it's a heavy lift that month. That's why we do all this now. And that's why you spend so much time trying to evaluate and guesstimate where you're gonna be August 1st.
Did you see in the email from Corey about the meeting on the 2nd of July? About maybe changing that meeting? We had a budget meeting scheduled for the 2nd.
That, that was a wish of mine. That's not the preliminary. Yeah. The preliminary budget hearing is June 18th.
What
And
was the
that's-
2nd of July for, you know?
Yeah, a lot of counties, actually solidify their budget in July at the first.
Oh, okay.
And that has been my desire, but it's not gonna happen.
Okay.
At least until we have 3 commissioners who really solidly understand the budget. And I believe we'll get there someday. I think with where we are at with everything, with everything is, we are gonna have to wait for valuations. So that's nothing more than Laura's pipe dream.
It was ambitious goal setting.
It is, yeah, and it's still my goal.
Yeah.
It's not
Well,
gonna happen.
You have to have a deadline, or as I've seen every year, there are people who wait till the absolute last minute, just because they can. Because you said this is the deadline, they wait. Makes it tough. So if you say you got a deadline early, then you have a good odds of getting 99% of what you need done. But you'll still
Right.
have those stragglers. So for those stragglers and impossible things, it gives you room to play.
Right,
Otherwise, there's no way.
and today's deadline is a good example. We have 2 letters we're addressing today that really should have been completed last Friday. But they didn't follow their guidelines, our requirements, so they're stragglers and we'll deal
And
with
his-
them today.
He said, oh, it's gonna be after 5. Well, I'd already gone home, so
Right? Yeah,
I didn't get it till today.
right. Okay,
So, anyway.
so,
Okay, so.
any surprises here, Debbie?
No, not really. Most of them have cut their 2% and or more, if possible. Now, I spent some time calculating 2% operations from everybody, basically, what their 2% would be. And like you guys, 2% was a total of 689 out of your budgets.
No. Sorry. The reason for the 2% was to actually make room for a 2.1% CPI. And
You're looking at everything.
I was looking at everything, and that was actually the proposal I made at the very beginning, so a couple months ago. The idea being, any good supervisor can cut their budget by 2% without realizing any hurt. But what any good supervisor realizes is you do not ditch your employees. So the 2% cut was based on the fact that we have good supervisors, and realizing a 2.1 or 2.5 is what we were talking about at the time. COLA was in realizing that those good supervisors will be asking more of their employees, and you make it right by them by giving them the CPI plus, as we promised in our goals. So the 2%'s off everything. So what that means is, those smart supervisors we have, we're having to find their 2% from wages in their operations. Now, last year, I had proposed that all departments in the general fund cut by 5%. For, to realize those cash reserves that we were missing, that were overspent. might compromise that let's give them a full year to come up with a 10% savings off their full budgets. Nobody did that, and we didn't hold their feet to the fire. So this year, we're being extreme good guys by saying, this year you will cut 2% of your entire budget. It's a heck of a lot less than the 5% last year or the 10% last year. So, no, it's the full budget amount, including personnel costs.
Okay. But everybody's cut.
Okay,
Trying to think if there was any that I noted that hadn't cut. I was trying to make note as I went. That wasn't cutting. And that's where looking at it without the wages was hard,
right,
for the most
except
part.
if you
Without
take,
entering
tell me
anything.
if this is wrong, if you take your current budget minus 2%, doesn't that give you what next year's budget should be cut by, right? So, like, the commissioner's budget should then be short 3788. If you're pulling over the exact same wages, granted, there'll be a little bit difference with work comp, but that would show us exactly where we're at with our 2%, right?
In theory, yeah.
So our bottom lines should be, for commissioners, 189,388 minus 3788. So if we add up our cuts, we should come up with 3788 just in the cuts. Just kind of going at it backwards.
Mhm. Okay.
So I guess we can evaluate if everyone did what they were supposed to and then come back later and go over those.
Okay, yeah,
Okay,
better just make sure. Misstate something.
sure. And like Bob said, if a department, and we have a couple we need to talk about, did not realize the revenue, then they don't get that expenditure. Every department has a responsibility to the rest of the departments, again, general fund, that they bring in what they say they would, that what we built the budget on, and if they don't, the next year they cut by that amount. Unless there's a better plan out there. And that's why I was asking Bob so many questions about that.
Okay. I'll have to go back and look cuts, because I know everybody cut, I just didn't get the math done. So we'll make sure.
Okay, that'll work.
And the unknown with the wages too, so that makes it a little easier to,
Yeah,
at a glance.
for now.
Okay.
So should we just come back to expenditures then later?
Yeah,
Have
and that'll
another
give me
meeting?
time to
Okay.
get Corey's finished, get public health is all done. Since they were stragglers at the last minute.
So can we talk about those? Julie sent us a letter. And, did you get a copy of this?
I did not.
Okay, what she's asking for is quite a bit of an increase. My argument is